BBC Question Time returns tonight with David Dimbleby. Image, Getty. The two MPs will sit on the panel and will be going head-to-head in a heated debate. Mackenzie, former advisor to Nick Clegg, political commentator Rod Liddle, and Ayesha Hazarika, columnist for the Evening Standard, make the rest of the lineup. Topics which are likely to be discussed on the BBC's topical debate programme this week include Labour's party conference in Liverpool, Theresa May's humiliation in Salzburg, the United Nations General Assembly in New York, and the revelation one of Skripal's suspect was made hero of Russia with a medal by President Putin. Live updates from the show can be found below. 11:50 p.m. We are off. David Dimbleby wraps up next week. Question Time will be held in Canary Wharf, and the following week it will take place in Edinburgh. Mr. Dimbleby pointed out BBC Question Time is now also on Instagram. 11:47 p.m. New question. Should allegations of alleged assault be automatically believed until the guilt is established? Mackenzie said that people have to be innocent until proven guilty. She said, "We have had this surge in allegations of sexual assaults, but it is not because there have been more sexual assaults, but because people have been silent for generations. When I was 14, I was pushed into the hedge by a stranger who groped me. I didn't even tell my parents. I didn't go to the police. We have to encourage people to speak out and seek justice." 11:45 p.m. Mackenzie agrees with Mr. Rees-Mogg on Labour's nationalisation. Mackenzie has agreed with what Mr. Rees-Mogg said about Labour's nationalisation, even though it comes at surprise. She said, "A nationalisation agenda would waste billions and billions of pounds that could go into the NHS and our schools." 11:42 p.m. Jacob Rees-Mogg blasts Jeremy Corbyn's economic policy. Jacob Rees-Mogg has hit out at Jeremy Corbyn's new economic policy, which would see employers owning a share in their company. Mr. Rees-Mogg said it would be a positive thing, but what the Labour leader has proposed is actually a tax grab. Ian Lavery said we should respect the result of that referendum. Image, BBC. 11:36 p.m. Rod Liddle claims if there was a general election in the next couple of weeks, Labour would win, answering a question regarding Jeremy Corbyn's speech at the Labour conference in particular regarding Mr. Corbyn's statement about ending greed culture. Mr. Liddle said the Labour leader did well. He said, "I am not sure what 400,000 green jobs are, but there are many things of his speech that appealed to people, such as the level of social inequality between the North and South divide." He added, "And I think that if there was a new general election in the next couple weeks, Labour would win by a mile." 11:32 p.m. David Dimbleby announces next week's BBC Question Time will go live from Canary Wharf. BBC Question Time presenter announced that program will air from Canary Wharf next week. 11:28 p.m. Ian Lavery fires Chequers is dead and the only way forward is a general election. A woman in the audience told the panel she wants a second referendum because of the lies during the Brexit campaign. Ian Lavery answered her statement saying that having another referendum would be wrong. He explained, "My view is that Chequers is dead, but it is the only deal at the table. It will be a cliff-edge Brexit regardless. The Tory party are against Chequers, Labour is against Chequers, and I am a great believer in democracy. The only way is to have a general election." 11:23 p.m. Ms. Hazarika falls out with Rod Liddle over the heart of Brexit. Stand-up comedian Ayesha Hazarika insisted that Brexit, of course, it is not going to go the way you wanted. She explained, "Brexit's at his heart is a project of the right, for the right, by the right." Rod Liddle immediately fired that it was nonsense. He said, "I did not vote Leave from the right, I voted Leave from the right." Jacob Rees-Mogg said the UK should crack on and leave the EU as soon as possible. Image, Getty. 11:15 p.m. New question, is it time for a Brexit supporter to lead the negotiations? David Dimbleby told Jacob Rees-Mogg as the best person to answer this question, given the fact he previously criticised Chequers, calling it a dying duck, a thunderstorm. Jacob Rees-Mogg said, "The Prime Minister is of course a Brexit supporter and a supporter that Brexit means Brexit, but to be frank I agree a lot with Rod's analysis on this. I think we made the EU running the negotiations and decide the timetable of the negotiations. Regarding Chequers he insisted, I think Chequers is not leaving the EU, but being tied to the EU rulebook. The Prime Minister believes in Chequers and I want her to change her policy, and I think inevitably her policy will change because It has no supporters. 11:10 p.m. Polly Mackenzie hits back at Jacob Rees-Mogg. Polly Mackenzie claims that leaving without a deal would be catastrophic, especially if we have a hard Brexit. She said, if we have friction at our borders and queues at our borders, we massively affect our economy. I don't believe jobs should be on the line for an ideological hard Brexit. 11:07 p.m. David Dimbleby asks Jacob Rees-Mogg, what is wrong with wanting a referendum on what way we should leave the EU? BBC Question Time host has asked Jacob Rees-Mogg that, given that there are different ways of leaving the EU, why it would be wrong in voting on what way we SGIYKD leave. Jacob Rees-Mogg answered that we know that we are leaving, which does not mean Chequers are remaining in the EEA. He said, all these matters should come to a general election. 11 p.m. New question, if you say we want a second referendum, does it no go against the Labour manifesto from last year? Jacob Rees-Mogg answered the second question from the audience saying the UK should crack on and leave the EU as soon as possible. Mr. Rees-Mogg insisted that the job of the opposition is to oppose, and opposition parties always want another general election. He claimed that actually there is a smallish group of people who don't want Brexit, adding, I don't think the British people will fall for that. I think we should say the decision has been taken. Frankly, I think we should crack on and leave as soon as possible. 10.55 Rod Liddle says we will have another second referendum only if Corbyn becomes PMTHE. Sun and Sunday Times columnist claimed that by announcing a second referendum, Jeremy Corbyn did a very clever political move. He said, listening to Corbyn, it was very clear that they want a second referendum or vote down every deal the government will get. He outlined everything he wanted. It was a clever political move. I think he will benefit politically from that. I think we will be heading towards a second referendum if Labour gets into government. 10:52 p.m. First question, with Labour announcing a new referendum, is that ignoring the will of the people? Labour MP Ian Lavery answers the first question, claiming that even though he was a Remainer, and still is, we should respect the result of that referendum. He explained, my view is this, we need to negotiate a decent Brexit deal. Jacob and his group happy to have a no-deal Brexit, that would be catastrophic. 10:48 p.m. Bishop Auckland Town Hall welcomes the BBC's flagship debate programme hosted by David Dimbleby. Bishop Auckland is a market town and civil parish in County Durham in northeast England. It is located 12 miles northwest of Darlington, 12 miles southwest of Durham and 5 miles southeast of Crook. The town is also colloquially referred to as Bishbeggar. Who is Rod Liddle? Mr. Liddle is a Sun and Sunday Times columnist and is associated editor of The Spectator. He edited the BBC's Today programme from 1998 until 2002. Who is Ayesha Hazarika? Ms. Hazarika is a stand-up comedian and writes a column for the Evening Standard. She is a former advisor to Gordon Brown. Who is Jacob Rees-Mogg? Mr. Rees-Mogg is a Conservative MP for North East Somerset. He launched an alternative plan for a harder Brexit this week. He is the third favourite among Tory members to lead the party. Who is Polly Mackenzie? Ms. Mackenzie is the chief executive of Demos think tank. She was an advisor to Nick Clegg as Deputy Prime Minister and helped establish the Women's Equality Party. Who is Ian Lavery? Ian Lavery is a Labour MP for Wansbeck since the 2010 general election. He is the former trade union leader for Northumberland.